folks, this is Dr. Emily Sherning with AR. I wanted to talk with you about this really cool experience that I had yesterday doing climate outreach work at an event in an extremely conservative area. So I was up at the Blue Water Festival at Lake Okoboji, which is in the northwest corner of Iowa yesterday. The northwest corner of Iowa is very heavily Republican. Dickinson County, where I was exhibiting yesterday, voted 71% Republican in the 2016 election, 66 in the 2020 election. And it is very socially and religiously conservative in that area. This was a cool chance to do exhibition work at a big public festival with a different audience than usually gets to hear about climate. And it's an important audience. It's an area where the climate outlook is really good. And I want to show you a little bit about the quality of the land. So check this out. Last year's land values show a Dickinson County as enormously valuable per acre, right on the edge of this large block of some of the most valuable, most productive farmland in the world. And even with the drought, driving through there yesterday, the amount of work that is going into feeding America, feeding the world from that corner of the state is incredible. And people don't get enough credit for it. Now, I don't want to make super broad generalizations. My goal is not to offend anyone here. But when we will talk about the climate community, when we talk about scientists who are doing work in the climate space, a lot of them are very prejudiced against conservative communities. A lot of them don't see it as important that they be able to access this climate data, and they talk bad about them. And I know that's not true of all scientists, but it is often true. And I think that there's a lot of fear also in the science community around these areas. I hear from other members of the scientific community, the climate and resilience adaptation community, who are scared to go and talk to people in communities like this, like the northwest corner of Iowa, because of the sort of response that they expect from people. And I want to tell you about the kind of response that I got from people. So I know this is like a little too much of me, but I could not trust myself to hold this note up to the screen and not give you the actual directions. I experienced a wonderful outpouring of support and interest from the community up in the northwest corner of Iowa, as evidenced by this handwritten note giving me directions to a rare plant spot where, please notice, cows are directions. Frankly, if you ever are lucky enough to receive a cultural artifact from an agricultural area where cows are directions, you understand the warmth that is in my for the people of this area. It is such a special thing. I think that is the truest connection that those of us who are really connected with the land can make with each other, is sharing with each other the precious spots where we can forage or find rare plants. And that's exactly the sort of connection that I was able to make with so many people up there in the northwest corner, where many people would have an expectation of hostility in conversations around climate. I think that there were a lot of things on my side to set me up for success, and one of them was help from local volunteers. This is one of our lovely volunteers, and this is the setup that we had for tabling yesterday. It's You can see that the community provided excellent tabling setups. They put up all of the tents and everything. And the local volunteers who supported me, there are women who are involved in congregational work, women who are involved in the homeschooling community, maybe not the first people that some would think of when we think about climate outreach and outreach about our climate future. And we're really making a mistake when we're not helping everyone come to the table, when we're not helping everyone who's passionate about building a good future in America have an open, welcoming place at the table about climate. We are leaving out so many wonderful people who want to be active, who are active in their community, and who in many cases are already doing incredible conservation work. This is a picture, just one picture. I was working the crowd, right? This is our wonderful volunteer. She's working with a family group here with our groundwater exhibit. The key message that we were working on getting out to this crowd was that securing, protecting, being aware of, conserving our groundwater is really important to our climate future in Northwest Iowa, to our continuing success as an agricultural powerhouse in Northwest Iowa. So we had this hands-on activity that families could do, particularly keep the kids busy so that parents can talk about what groundwater is, how it's structured, how it works, and how soil compaction impacts our ability to get water through the soil back into the groundwater to recharge it. So it gives you a lot of cool, important stuff to talk about that is physically observable, non-controversial. People can make up their own minds about groundwater, right? Like it's not an area where we have a lot of politicization or debate. And then for people who are interested in looking at USDA projections, I had them there and was wanting to talk with people about them. And those interactions were fantastic. Were they conventional interactions? Say that they were conventional interactions. I don't think we need to stick to one script on climate. This was an exhibition that was very close to me in the row. It's an exhibition working to stop a proposed wind farm that would go over a substantial portion of the agricultural land near the lakes. Many times you would think, if you're a person who's like steeped in the core climate audience, right? You would think if people are opposed to a wind farm, if they're opposed to the energy transition, people might make a lot of assumptions from this one sign here, right? But this is definitely not a place that's safe to talk about climate. Don't think that that is true at all. I think that we need to stop making assumptions about our neighbors and our countrymen and make space for us to actually have conversations. And sometimes that means scaffolding a way that our conversation can come together, finding places for us to meet. I talked about how, for many of us, that place to meet is our love of the land, our love of living things. I Really, I enjoy talking so much with farmers. And there is not every exhibition, there's not every outreach event where you really have the chance to reach farmers and reach farming families. Their interest in having members of their families do hands-on work to experience groundwater and connect that directly to their agricultural practices was enormous. And many farmers have not received the sort of culturally sensitive information on the climate outlook that validates the work they're doing and their importance to our food security, America's future, and our ability to help feed the world. It's so important we can connect with people, we can meet them where they are. Most people that I talked to, the conversations were not charged, except for like with positive energy, interest, human connection, and excitement about the fact that there is hope for the future, that there are things we can do to get ready. But of course, there are going to be people in an environment like that who want to fight because newsflash, some humans enjoy fighting, right? So I had a number of gentlemen come up to me who, if you've ever worked as a teacher, you know that there are some boys who are just like rascally, right? Like you run into rascally people sometimes. I had a couple of gentlemen come up separately and ask me, so do you believe in climate change? And I'm like, why get caught in this epistemological debate? Epistemology is not the thing we need to be working on. We need to work on getting ready for an American future, right? I told these gentlemen, well, I don't believe in climate change, believe in God. Climate change isn't a matter of belief, but do you want to see what the USDA projections look like? And well, the answer to that is I do want to see what the USDA projections look like. That if we can manage to avoid falling into these cultural traps that have been created that stop us from talking to each other, that stop us from having positive interactions, you can be the one. You can be the one in the interaction who flips the script, who works to connect instead of divide. We can all come together on climate. Oh man, and I had some good conversations with those guys. Once those guys saw that I was willing to play, which, a lot of people, some aggression, especially in conservative areas, some aggression can be a form of play. Like you don't have to be scared of each other all the time. And it's just like with any other rascally animal, if you show fear to a dog who's showing aggressive signals, is that dog going to be like, I'm so sorry I scared you? An aggressive animal, an animal who's inclined towards aggression, sometimes as a form of play, is going to see fear and their prey drive is going to be activated, right? I'm sorry, I don't mean to compare men to dogs. I'm not there. But I think that those of us who want to talk about living things, maybe we can manage not to be so hurt when we can identify that we have some of the same impulses that animals do, right? It's more a question of if we're able to overcome them through civil discourse, which I believe we can. Engaging in conflict, my point is, with the spirit of play, with the spirit of compassion, with the spirit of camaraderie, conflict is a potential for connection. That's exactly what I found up in the Northwest corner. I'm so happy that I went. I'm so happy that I didn't let other people's fears infect me and stop me from making these human connections. Because there are so many people doing cool stuff up there. A lot of people working hard themselves and to convince their neighbors on habitat restoration. I met a lot of people in their 80s, 60s, 40s, and 20s who are doing small scale habitat restoration and are having a lot of the same experiences as me with how many native pollinators want to come out from the margins. That once you get to year 2, year 3, you start seeing stuff you've never seen before. Gentle native bees and wasps that just want to live. They just want a place to live. And some of the habitat that they have up in that northwest corner, some of the fens, the lakes, they contain very rare, valuable ecosystems that just need space. They just need space to live. They just need people to give them a chance. And people need to know that the conservation work that they're doing in these lower change areas is absolutely critical for America's future biodiversity. I was so happy to connect with people that I otherwise would not have had the chance to connect with. People who live in a very different part of the state, people who I would be unlikely to travel there if I hadn't had the chance to do this work. And speaking of the chance to do this work, another common line of a conflict that one often comes into when one is doing climate work in more conservative areas is that if people are to engage in a more conflict oriented way, a lot of times the first question that they will ask is who's funding you? Because they assume that your work is going to be tied to political interests, to political messaging, to a variety of cultural scripts. They want to be able to make those connections. And if you offend them, they want to be able to complain to your funder, right? It was very interesting to have conversations with people when they wanted to know what is my source of funding. I say, I'm a 501c3. I'm funded by the work that my husband and I have put into this project and by donations from people like you. That's what I'm funded by. I don't have to fit with any line of political ideology, and I don't want to. I'm just a scientist who loves communicating with people and who has a strong enough background in statistics to be able to interpret this climate information for you. And I'm here because I want to bring this message to you. That's a different place to stand on than many people are able to. Not all of us have the privilege to have that sort of freedom of speech because of funding constraints. I think it's very important that organizations like American Resiliency exist, independent nonprofits that can do messaging from places that other organizations, larger, more powerful organizations, just can't do because of these pressures that come with the funding, with optimizing these pressures towards infinite growth, right? What the climate movement needs, what we need in America is to work together. We are in such a fortunate position. We are facing incredible challenges, but our outlook is one of the most potentially resilient of any country on earth. We're very fortunate. We have a lot of low change areas, particularly in our strong agricultural communities. And we have a lot of hope to keep many, many, many Americans across the country in their homes if we begin adaptation work, if we begin building resilience now. Love working with conservative leaning communities on climate because it means I get to work with communities like my community. I live in an agricultural community in Poweshiek County, Iowa. I love my neighbors. I love my community. I think that the predominantly white, predominantly Christian agricultural communities across America need the same quality of outreach work that many climate scientists are willing to present to many other communities on climate, and that they deserve outreach work that is focused on connecting their interests and their values to make climate science relevant to them, to their future. Everybody wants to build a good tomorrow in America. We don't need to fight about this. We can get ready. And I'm so happy to have had this inspiring experience of connection. It makes me feel even more certain about our potential if we can work through fear to get ready together. I want to take a moment, as always, as forever, to acknowledge and thank the many, many people who are supporting AR. You can see we've had such an outpouring of support over the last couple of weeks, financially and in volunteer time, that I've had to restructure the donor cards to try and make space for everyone's name to be seen and acknowledged. Everyone who contributes to the project, you really uplift, you help, you inspire me, and you're really helping me to keep getting the word out there to more of our fellow Americans so that more of us can come together to the table on climate. If you want to come together for a community conversation, we're going to be focusing next Sunday, August 20th at 2 p.m. Central Time on the resilience challenges related to extreme heat that'll be facing folks in the Southwest and the Southeast. I'm looking forward to a good conversation with lots of practical tips. We're getting ready for a rich resource based conversation. So please come if you're interested. The recording will be posted afterwards if you can't make it. And thank you again. Thank you for helping me to do this work. Let's get ready together. Bye.